Kuhn Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @KuhnReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@kuhnreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the National, Sunday, 19th of January 2025. From the news section. Gaza ceasefire deal begins after 3-hour delay amid hostage dispute. This article has been written by Adam Robertson. The Gaza ceasefire deal has now officially begun following a 3-hour delay. It comes after Israel said the fighting in Gaza would continue until Hamas handed over the names of the 3 hostages it planned to release on Sunday. During the delay, it's been reported that at least 10 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, according to Palestinian officials. Hamas blamed a delay in handing over the names on technical field reasons, but later published them on social media. Nearly 3 hours after the ceasefire was originally supposed to start at 8:30 a.m. local time, officials said that it had started. Celebrations erupted across Gaza while some Palestinians started to return to their homes, even after the delay underscored the fragility of the agreement. In a statement, the spokesperson of Qatar's foreign ministry has confirmed the ceasefire has started. Regarding reports when the ceasefire will begin in Gaza, we confirmed that the names of the 3 hostages to be released today have been handed over to the Israeli side, Majed al-Ansari said. They are 3 Israeli citizens, one of whom is Romanian nationality and the other of British nationality, and thus the ceasefire has begun. Meanwhile, the party of Israel's hardline National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said its cabinet ministers submitted their resignations from the government on Sunday in opposition to the ceasefire. The departure of the Jewish Power Party weakens Netanyahu's coalition but will not affect the ceasefire. It does not come as a complete shock as Ben-Gvir had threatened to quit over the deal on Thursday, claiming it would erase the achievements of the war. In a statement, his party called the ceasefire deal a capitulation to Hamas and hit out at what they called the release of hundreds of murderers. Netanyahu said on Saturday that Israel is treating the ceasefire with Gaza as temporary and retains the right to continue fighting if necessary. This article has been written by Adam Robertson. From the National, Sunday, 19th of January 2025, from the news section. How Iceland's EU accession could pave way for independent Scotland. This article has been written by Nance Bauer. A deal to allow Iceland to join the EU swiftly could pave the way for a relatively quick agreement for an independent Scotland, according to Dr. Kirsty Hughes, former director of the European Centre on European Relations. Iceland's possible speedy accession to the EU also casts doubt over any policy which favours an independent Scotland joining the European Economic Area (EEA) rather than applying for full membership of the EU, she believes. The EEA is favoured by some in the independence movement, including the ALBA party, as the future for an independent Scotland. At the moment, Iceland, Norway and Liechtenstein are outside the EU but members of the EEA and the European Free Trade Agreement (EFTA). The countries within the EU are also EEA members, but it is argued that if only the remaining members of both EFTA and the EEA are Norway, Liechtenstein, then there would be little enthusiasm to maintain the EEA. Iceland's new government has stated its intention to hold a referendum on the continuation of Iceland's European Union accession talks no later than 2027. Iceland's new Prime Minister Kristen Frostadottir also wants to set up an expert panel on the pros and cons of joining the euro. If Iceland votes in favor of full membership of the EU rather than remaining in the EEA, the process could move quickly, Hughes points out. As it is already in the EEA, it already meets the single market criteria that are core to EU membership. An Iceland accession process moving ahead of all the other current candidates is quite likely, says he in her blog. A swift process for Iceland would demonstrate that an independent Scotland applying to join the EU could move relatively fast too. She acknowledges that Scotland, given Brexit, no longer meets all the EU single market criteria, and the Scottish Government has not kept to its goal of keeping aligned to EU laws in environment and agriculture. But Scotland would still for now be in a relatively good position to have a fairly speedy accession process, says Hugh. However, she said Iceland's possible entry into the EU raised questions over the future of the EEA. No state has ever aimed to join the EEA since its initial founding in 1994, when the three states, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, became members, she points out. In that same time period, the EU has expanded by 16 members and then lost one, the UK, and the EU today has 10 actual and potential candidate countries wishing to join. Hughes adds, if one of the three EEA/EFTA countries were to shift to the EU, it certainly raises questions about the EEA's future, and it underlines the already existing question of why an independent Scotland would choose to be a passive rule taker in the EEA, rather than a seat at the table in the EU. Some have suggested that the EEA route would be quicker for an independent Scotland, but none of the EU's candidate countries since the EEA was formed 3 decades ago have chosen to go to the EEA route. Rather, they have gone straight for EU talks, agreeing trade and association agreements with the EU while the accession process unfolds. Hughes points out that the 30 states in the EEA, the EU 27 and the EEA/EFTA 3 would have to agree unanimously if Scotland did bizarrely go down the EEA route. And there would be equally tough accession talks on all dimensions of EU's single market in order to join. He says, all of these arguments have been set out often enough in Scotland's independence debate, but if Iceland does take up its EU accession talks again soon, then that will highlight even more the weakness of the independence in the EEA arguments. The moves by Iceland also show that joining the euro is not a question to be simply kicked into touch, as the Scottish Government is wont to do, according to Hugh. It may be the case that once in the EU a member state cannot be forced to join the euro, but it certainly has to make a genuine political commitment to do that before joining. Iceland's new government clearly states that the political benefits of having a seat at the EU table and a voice and a vote are desirable compared to being a rule taker in the EEA. If a country had more than 10 times smaller than Scotland by population since political benefits from being in the club, why wouldn't Scotland? This article has been written by Nance Boward. From the National, Sunday, 19th of January 2025. From the news section. Jeremy Corbyn slams Met Police for handling of London Palestine rally. This article has been written by Adam Robertson. Former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has hit out at the Met Police over its handling of a Palestine rally in London on Saturday. More than 70 demonstrators were arrested on suspicion of breaching protest conditions after reportedly breaking through a police line as they marched from a rally in Whitehall. It comes after the Met denied putting a ring of steel around the BBC as the force prevented plans by protesters to target the broadcaster's offices. It said it had blocked the march from gathering there because of broadcasting house's close proximity to a synagogue and the risk the protests could cause serious disruption to the Jewish holiday as congregants attended Shabbat services. Corbyn, who sits as an independent MP, responded to a post from the Met Police on Twitter/X which said, "The group that forced its way through the police line is now held at the northwest corner of Trafalgar Square. Anyone in that group should now disperse and leave the area. Anyone remaining in breach of the conditions or inciting further breaches will be arrested." In his response, the former Labour leader said, "This is not an accurate description of events at all. I was part of a delegation of speakers who wished to peacefully carry and lay flowers in memory of the children in Gaza who had been killed. This was facilitated by the police. We did not force our way through. When we reached Trafalgar Square, we informed police we would go no further, lay down flowers and disperse." Corbyn also said that Chief Steward Chris Nineham was arrested, with Stop the War having already called for his release. He further called on the Met to release all bodycam footage and retract its misleading account of events. As tweeted by Jeremy Corbyn on Twitter/X. "This is not an accurate description of events at all. I was part of a delegation of speakers who wished to peacefully carry and lay flowers in memory of children in Gaza who had been killed. This was facilitated by the police. We did not force our way through." The force confirmed 77 people were arrested during the protests and that an investigation has been launched. Former Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, who also attended the march, also hit out at the Met Police. Like Corbyn, he refuted the suggestion protesters had forced their way through and called on the Met to release body camera footage of his conversation with a police officer. "I spoke at demo and was part of a procession of speakers aiming to go to BBC to lay flowers commemorating the death of Palestinian children. We did not force our way through, the police allowed us to go through, and when stopped in Trafalgar Square, we laid our flowers and dispersed." As tweeted by John McDonnell on Twitter. Commander Adam Slonecki, who led the policing operations, said, "We have policed more than 20 national protests organized by the PSC since October 2023. This is the highest number of arrests we have seen in response to the most significant escalation in criminality. We could not have been clearer about the conditions in place. Protesters were to remain in Whitehall with no march towards the BBC. Our relationship with protest organizers has to be based on trust and good faith. If they say they will act responsibly and lawfully, we need to be able to know those are genuine assurances. That is why it was so deeply disappointed to see a deliberate effort involving organizers of the demonstration to breach the conditions and attempt to march out of Whitehall. Officers responded bravely and decisively, ensuring they got no further than Trafalgar Square and certainly nowhere near their target. I am quite confident this was a coordinated breach with the intention being to reach the BBC at Portland Place in defiance of the conditions. There is video footage of one of the organizers clearly inciting the crowd to join a march, and one of the organizations involved has released a statement this evening confirming as much. At the same time as the group was attempting to force its way past the police lines, camera crews were seen arriving in Portland Place. It is unlikely that the timing was simply a coincidence. We are in possession of footage from officers' body-worn cameras, from CCTV, and from social media. We know who was involved in leading the movement of so many people through police lines. Investigations are now underway, and we will make every effort to bring prosecutions against those we identify. This article has been written by Adam Robertson. From the National, Sunday, 19th of January 2024. From the news section. Man working for Scottish charity suspected to be in Israeli prison. This article has been written by Nance Power, a child psychotherapist working for an Edinburgh charity who disappeared after being picked up by the Israeli Defense Force (IDF) in war-torn Gaza, is reported to be in the notorious Day-Taiman prison. News of Mohammed el-Sharif was passed on to his young family in Gaza by a recently released prison detainee. However, fears remain over Mohammed's health and well-being. The psychotherapist who works for Edinburgh Firefly was lifted at the end of November while trying to move his young family to a safer part of the stricken region. Along with other residents, the family were walking westwards from Gaza City when soldiers stopped them at a checkpoint, separated the women and children on one side of the road and put the men on the other, then took all the men away. It is not known when all of the people detained during Israel's onslaught on Gaza will be released. Mohammed was the director of a child mental health clinic in Gaza, which was bombed after the region's invasion by Israel in response to the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023. Despite being displaced several times, he had managed to keep contact with Firefly staff until he was picked up by the IDF on November 27. Mohammed has no links with Hamas and can be seen with his three sons in a heartbreaking video made more than a year ago in which he pleads for an end to the violence. Despite the report that he is alive, staff at Firefly International, which supports children affected by the ravages of war, are still desperately concerned about his welfare. Director Jane Salmonson said, "It is difficult to sleep at night thinking of my former colleague, a child psychotherapist who has been incarcerated at Day-Taiman since November, being tortured, abused, and starved. The only hope I can cling on to is that Mohammed and all other detainees will be released. The sheer scale, extent, and depth of the cruelty inflicted on the Palestinian people, including children, in this conflict is beyond belief. Day-Taiman, an Israeli military base which is being used as a detention center for Palestinians, has been condemned internationally for alleged torture and gang rape of detainees, including children and health workers. Prisoner testimonies of widespread human rights violations have been corroborated by Israeli whistleblowers and an investigation by CNN. Leaked CCTV footage has shown one gang rape of a Palestinian by Israeli soldiers. Gazans like Mohammed, who have been detained since October 7, 2023, have been classed as unlawful combatants and kept as suspects even if there is no evidence of any involvement with Hamas. Some have died and others have had limbs amputated as a result of injuries sustained from being shackled, according to reports. One 14-year-old child interviewed by Amnesty International stated he had been beaten, warmed with cigarettes, and kept blindfolded and handcuffed. Several former detainees have testified they were tortured by a metal rod, forced up their anuses, and were also given electric shocks. Human Rights Watch has documented the cases of detained health workers who were allegedly stripped, beaten, and subjected to sexual torture and violence and handcuffed for weeks on end. One lawyer allowed access to the prison, Khaled Mahajne, said conditions were horrific, and a journalist he had been seeking, called Mohammed Arab, was unrecognizable. Arab told him multiple prisoners had died from torture injuries. The Israeli military has stated that detainees are treated appropriately and carefully and that incidents of unlawful handcuffing are not known to the authorities. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture and Unlawful Combatants, Alice Jill Edwards, has called for an investigation into conditions at the prison and treatment of detainees. This article has been written by Nance Power.
From The National, Monday, the 20th of January 2025. From the comment section, I'm an American in Scotland. This is how I feel on Inauguration Day. Article by Whitney Evans. There's a misguided peace that enters you when you leave the United States. A sense of liberation that you're free from the lunacy that is the current political landscape. It becomes very clear, however, that no matter how far I fling myself into the world, American political policy will impact the lives of those I love and often guide other nations towards more fascist, capitalist societies. I can run, as they say, but I can't hide. I come from a family of primarily right-wing, Trump-voting, working-class people. Since 2016, I have argued, yelled, wrung my hands, torn my hair, written passionate, informative letters stating clear, well-considered reasons why Trump and his cronies shouldn't be elected. None of this is impactful. None of it falls on receptive ears. If anything, the people I'm talking to dig their heels in further, become even more adamant about their own viewpoints, rarely, if ever, engaging in good faith conversation. This disappoints but doesn't surprise me. At the end of the day, my arguments have been ineffective, and I now have multiple family members proudly attending Trump's inauguration in Washington, D.C. The inauguration of the second term of Donald Trump's presidency was not inevitable. Blame for his re-election cannot be placed solely on MAGA voters. The most glaring and frustrating part of today for this American immigrant is that it didn't need to be this way. Democrats led by wealthy, out-of-touch dinosaur Joe Biden ran on a platform that included codifying Roe versus Wade, passing meaningful gun control legislation, overhauling immigration policy, stopping drilling on federal lands, expanding access to childcare and elder care, none of which was accomplished. Perhaps the most notable of Biden's disappointments comes from his refusal to act against Netanyahu's genocidal Zionist regime. This bled into the general election campaign of Kamala Harris, who also refused to acknowledge, in any meaningful way, the death and destruction of Palestine funded by American tax dollars. During his final address to the country, Biden warned us that an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that really threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights, and freedom. This isn't news, and Joe Biden actively participated in the creation of this oligarchy. This is what makes me most angry about today's inauguration. The Biden administration's heavy reliance on identity politics, reaching across the aisle and ignoring the very plight of voters who were begging for change, begging for more affordable houses, better access to childcare, and for the love of all that is good in this world, universal health care in one of the unhealthiest nations in the developed world. Today I'm sad, angry, and tired. I know firsthand the evil that will be pumped through the arteries of my country because we've already experienced it. We tried to sever its power in the hopes that the Biden administration could possibly correct the course, reverse the myriad diabolical disasters orchestrated by the first Trump presidency, but that hope in the Democratic establishment has died. My anger is a distraction from my fear. I am afraid that most of the people I love in this world will have their quality of life, their basic human rights, and peace of mind significantly diminished by the second Trump administration. My anger also keeps me from despair, however. I've not lost hope in America. It isn't entirely unredeemable. My own reality here in Scotland has taught me that there is no running. Wherever I go, there I am. I can't remove myself from the reality of what is happening in my homeland. And it's not only in my homeland, it's also in the United Kingdom, making its presence known in Western Europe as fascist waves crash hard across the continent. So while I'm mourning for my country, I'm also bracing myself for our collective future because Donald Trump is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is fascism, and none of us can run away from it. And that article was written by Whitney Evans. From The National, Monday, the 20th of January 2025, from the comment section. Keir Starmer has misread UK's relationship with the new US government. Article by George Caravan. All hail President Trump. Donald has returned to Pennsylvania Avenue in triumph, and the world will never be the same again. Back in 2017, at the start of Trump's first presidency, much of the global liberal establishment was in despair over how such a rank incompetence and misogynist could have been elected in the first place. His 4 years in the White House were then dismissed as an aberration. Business as usual would soon return. Trump's refusal to accept defeat in 2020 by a good 7 million votes was seen as typical of his bluster, narcissism, and demagoguery. But Trump's redux, as he thirsts for revenge, has been met with a very different response. Much of liberal Europe has been rushing to placate and fet the Donalds, not least the UK's Labour government. Alas, it is Keir Starmer who turns out to be the naive ingenue, not Trump. Rarely has any British government so misread its relationship with an incoming US president. Remember how Labour spent the US election sending teams of activists to help the Democrats? So much so that Trump's campaign filed an official complaint to the Federal Election Committee last October, accusing Labour of blatant foreign interference. Starmer then proceeded to appoint none other than Lord Mandelson, the Dark Lord and long-time vocal Trump baiter, as British ambassador to Washington. Talk about red rags to angry bulls. Mandy's trademark is oozing oily hypocrisy, and he was soon on Fox News telling us how he thinks Trump is a reformed character and the best thing for the world since sliced bread, a commodity with which Lord Mandelson has little experience. Result: the Trump team is dropping heavy hints that the new president will refuse to accept Mandy in Washington. Instead, Trump wants the current ambassador, Dame Karen Pierce, to stay in post. Now Trump may just be playing his usual games with people's heads. A chastened, weakened Peter Mandelson might still become ambassador, but the damage has already been done. Far from being any Anglo-US special relationship, Mandy will be lucky to get his phone calls returned. He did not attend the big pre-inauguration party on Friday hosted by Nigel Farage in Washington, even though he'd been invited. This matters because Starmer has made a new US-UK trade deal central to his foreign and economic policy, as did the Tories under Boris. The US is the UK's largest bilateral trading partner and largest export market outside the EU. Negotiations for a new trade treaty were officially launched in May 2020. They have got nowhere, and matters are likely to stay that way under Trump. Worse, the Trump administration is threatening to raise tariffs on foreign imports, which will hit the UK and Scottish whisky sales harder than most. Good luck to Lord Mandelson with that one. The Trump administration's disdain for Starmer might be shrugged off for 4 years, except for the fact that the Donald and his acolytes are actively interfering in British politics on a grand scale. This is seriously dangerous. Protestations from Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy notwithstanding, Labour have caved in abjectly to attacks from Elon Musk, Trump's de facto vice president, by agreeing to a series of inquiries into rape gang grooming of young girls. Nandy told Sky, "We're not a government that conducts government by social media." By then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper did just that. Expect a full-blown national inquiry in due course. Musk has drawn first blood and won't stop. The Trump administration is also set on reversing Labour's controversial decision to hand over UK colonial sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, a strategic archipelago on the Indian Ocean, to Mauritius. The UK is under pressure from the United Nations to cede control, but the deal threatens the continued existence of a US military base on one of the islands, Diego Garcia. Trump's administration worries this could enable China to expand influence in the Indian Ocean. Trump might veto the deal, and one doubts if Starmer has the guts to stand up to him. And we are only on day one of the second Trump presidency. What is emerging early on in Trump 2.0 is that there is more method than madness involved in these policy shifts. Trump and his high-tech acolytes are deliberately trying to destabilise the liberal establishment in the EU and UK for economic reasons. European business hides behind an intricate network of regulations, energy targets, and tax rules that protect it from foreign competition. These rules have become increasingly onerous for the US high-tech giants. Last year, the EU's top court ordered Apple to pay the Irish government £11 billion in extra taxes. The European Commission has intervened vigorously to control research in artificial intelligence, the key technology where Musk and his fellow US oligarchs are investing heavily. Plus, AI needs vast new cheap energy supplies from fracking to power its data farms, a supply Musk and co think is constrained by European plans for net zero. The turn of the US high-tech oligarchs from supporting the Democrats to backing Trump is calculated and self-serving. European and UK interests and Canadian ones stand in their way. They are coming for Europe first. Trump is now a front for these interests. The strategy begins with destabilising existing Liberal and Social Democratic governments such as Starmer's, hence the support being given to Farage and Reform UK. Musk's little spat with Farage over Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, aka Tommy Robinson, is instructive. Trump and the oligarchs want acolytes, not allies. Farage was being served notice that the oligarchs can make political careers and break them if not obeyed. The big mistake is to think that we can wait Trump out and that 4 years from now the Liberal order will re-emerge unscathed. The oligarchs will simply find someone to replace Trump. Could that be Musk? The US Constitution debars anyone not born in America from being president, and Musk was born in South Africa. However, that has not stopped Musk supporters from offering ways he could enter US politics. Senator Rand Paul has suggested that Musk be appointed Speaker of the House, the de facto Prime Minister in the US system. Under a quirk of the US Constitution, Musk does not even need to be elected to become Speaker. The Constitution's only requirement is that the person is chosen by members of the House. All hail Speaker Musk. I doubt that we will see this happen. Musk prefers power without responsibility. Besides, he is too busy becoming president of Mars. But the very fact that senators are discussing these possibilities is proof of where we are at. We are in the era not of Donald Trump, but of the new oligarchy, run by a coterie of super-rich technology monopolists. They have social media to guile the masses and a new ideological priesthood led by the likes of Jordan Peterson. But somehow I think our old mole, who knows so well how to work underground, will appear eventually. The revolution. And that article was written by George Caravan.
From The National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the news section. 7 people taken to hospital following fire at Aberdeen Tower Block. Article written by Alistair Ferguson. 7 people have been taken to hospital following a deliberate fire at a tower block in Aberdeen. Emergency services were called to Alton Court on Seaton Crescent at around 8 p.m. on Monday, following reports of a fire. Firefighters tackled the blaze on the 12th floor of the 19-storey building and were able to extinguish the fire before leaving the area around 10 p.m. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, SFRS, said it sent 5 appliances to combat the blaze and were joined by 7 ambulances and 2 special operations teams at the scene. SFRS said 7 patients were taken to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary. Their conditions are currently unknown. Police Scotland said they are treating the wire as willful and inquiries into the blaze remain ongoing. A spokesperson said, at around 8:05 p.m. on Monday, January 20th, 2025, police received a report of a fire within a block of flats at Alton Court, Seaton Crescent, Aberdeen. Emergency services attended, and the fire was extinguished. The fire has been treated as willful, and inquiries are ongoing. An SFRS spokesperson said, "We were alerted at 7:58 p.m. on Monday, January 20th, to reports of a fire alarm activating at Alton Court, Seaton Crescent, Aberdeen. Operations Control mobilised 5 appliances to the scene and firefighters extinguished a fire affecting the communal area on the 12th floor of a 19-storey tower block of flats. 7 casualties were passed into the care of the Scottish Ambulance Service. Crews left the scene at 10:10 p.m. after ensuring the area was made safe." A spokesperson for the Scottish Ambulance Service said, "We received a call at 8:17 p.m. on Monday, January 20th, to attend an incident on Seaton Crescent, Aberdeen. We dispatched 7 ambulances and 2 special operations response teams to the scene. We transported 7 patients to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary." And that article was written by Alistair Ferguson. From the National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the news section. Elon Musk responds after outrage over Nazi salute at Trump inauguration. Article written by James Walker. Elon Musk has responded after he was seen making potential Hail Hitler salutes during President Donald Trump's inauguration. The US billionaire made the gesture 3 times at the rally following the presidential swearing-in ceremony on live television. He appeared on stage in front of 20,000 people and made the salute after saying, "There are elections that come and go. Some elections are important, some are not, but this one really mattered. I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you." The Jerusalem Post, an English-language Israeli paper, reported that the Tesla owner had appeared to Hail Hitler at the Trump inauguration. The paper later suggested it was a Hail Hitler salute. The Times of Israel, another large Israeli outlet, reported, "Elon Musk appears to perform fascist salute at inauguration event." But now, the owner of Tesla and social media site X, formerly Twitter, has responded, saying the claims are dirty tricks. Responding to a user on Twitter /X, he said, "Frankly, they need better dirty tricks. The everyone is Hitler attack is so tired." Musk also heaped praise on Trump throughout the rally, repeating Trump's promise of a coming golden age for the country. "It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured," Musk told the crowd at Capital One Arena. On social media, Musk posted his approval of Trump returning to power for a second term, the return of the king. During the inauguration inside the Capitol Rotunda, Musk was seated in a row that included other tech giants, including Google Chief Executive Sundar Pichai and Meta Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg. All were seated behind Trump's wife Melania and children, though Musk was seated closest to Trump. The treatment follows a hearty embrace by Trump of Musk, the world's wealthiest person. Musk contributed roughly $200 million, which is £162 million, to America PAC, a super political action committee that worked to organise Trump support last autumn. The proximity of so many of the world's wealthiest people to Trump's incoming government-led former president Joe Biden to warn of a burgeoning US oligarchy of tech billionaires. And that article was written by James Walker. From the National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the news section. Labour slated as experts say UK budget will lower real incomes. Article written by Steph Braun. Labour have been called out for promising to kickstart economic growth after experts said the UK government's budget will mean inflation and interest rates are higher for longer. Experts at the Fraser of Allender Institute have concluded that while the UK government was keen to present a budget supporting growth and avoiding tax increases in October, measures announced will reduce growth in the medium term. They also found tax increases will mostly be passed through to workers through less employment and fewer wages increases. SNP MSP Kenneth Gibson criticised Labour for promising there would be no tax rises, only to hike employers' national insurance contributions and not delivering on their pledge to grow the economy. He said, Labour promised to kickstart economic growth, but the UK economy has flatlined since they came to power. Labour also promised there would be no tax rises, but its decision to hike national insurance contributions is a tax on jobs. The OBR, Office for Budget Responsibility, has said that the cost of the tax hike, estimated to be around £800 per employee, will be passed on to workers through lower wages. These workers will also be hit with the double whammy of higher inflation and interest rates due to the Chancellor's budget decisions. In contrast, John Swinney has listened to businesses' concerns and made economic growth one of his government's key priorities. The SNP Scottish Government's budget sets out transformative investment proposals to grow the economy. SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn issued a warning earlier this month that Keir Starmer's Labour were looking increasingly clueless and incompetent on the economy. After it emerged, the pound had tumbled to its lowest level against the US dollar for over a year, as borrowing costs hit their highest level for 30 years. In the Deloitte-sponsored economic commentary, the Institute's economists are forecasting that growth in 2024 will end up at 0.9% and will be followed by 1.3% growth in 2025 and 1.2% growth in 2026. The concern, however, is that this growth could be a short-term boost rather than leading to increased growth in the medium to long term. Experts said analysis of the information published alongside the UK budget shows that in the medium term, measures announced by the UK government in the budget will mean that inflation and interest rates are higher for longer, and real incomes lower than would otherwise be the case. The Fraser of Allender director, Professor Mary Spowage, said the UK government were keen to present their budget in October as supporting growth, and that they had avoided tax increases on working people. However, the analysis alongside the budget shows that the impact of measures will reduce growth in the medium term and that tax increases will mostly be passed through to workers through less employment and fewer wage increases. The UK government will be hoping that improvements in public services will start to be felt, given extra public spending, and that growth will surprise on the upside to make future fiscal events easier. The reaction of businesses to the budget, with taxation increasing as a concern, may make that more difficult. The main messages from the Scottish budget were also analysed by experts. As a result of the UK government's budget, the Scottish Government had more money to allocate for 2025 to 2026 than had previously been expected, with a £3.4 billion uplift on the previous envelope for 2025 to 2026. Researchers said there was a considerable uplift in capital spending, which has allowed key capital budgets, such as the Affordable Housing Programme, to have funding restored. However, experts said the key issue in the budget was the planned scrapping of the two-child benefit cap from April 2026. Dr. Joe Sua, Deputy Director of the Institute, said the Scottish Government had more flexibility than they were likely expecting, given the increases in funding for 2025 to 2026. Overall, though, this budget in December had one eye on the Holyrood election in May 2026, with announcements on mitigation of the two-child benefit cap from April 2026. This issue has proven key, with Scottish Labour now set to abstain on the budget, which is likely to ensure it will pass. Wider issues about fiscal sustainability remain, though, with higher public sector pay in Scotland, the much larger public sector, and the increasing proportion of the Scottish budget, which is taken up by social security payments, which will increase further given the decision on the two-child cap. And that article was written by Steph Braun. From The National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the Politics section. Tommy Sheridan to pursue legal action against Scottish Council. Article written by Laura Pollock. Former MSP Tommy Sheridan is pursuing legal action against a Scottish council after being rejected for a job as a social worker. The former Scottish Socialist Party leader, who was jailed for committing perjury in 2011, has lodged a petition against Glasgow City Council and called for a judicial review. This petition seeks to challenge the decision to permanently exclude Mr. Sheridan from being employed as a social worker in Glasgow. Sheridan rose to prominence in Scotland during a campaign against the poll tax in the late 1980s, when he was the public face of a mass campaign against paying the controversial tax. He formed the Scottish Socialist Party in the late 1990s, which eventually went on to elect 6 MSPs to the Scottish Parliament in its peak. Sheridan was later sentenced to 3 years in jail for lying in court during a civil action against the News of the World paper. After a 3-month trial at the High Court in Glasgow, he was found guilty of lying and sent to prison for perjury. He appealed against his conviction in 2015 and again in 2016. Both applications were refused. He graduated from Glasgow Caledonian University last summer following a 2-year master's degree in social work. In the action against Glasgow City Council, Sheridan is listed as being represented by the law firm Drummond Miller, and the Govan Law Centre is instructed as principal agent. A council spokesman said, "We have responded to Mr. Sheridan's petition and are waiting to hear if it will be accepted by the court. It would be inappropriate to comment further at this point. A judge will now determine whether the case may proceed, and no hearing has been set." And that article was written by Laura Pollock. From The National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the Politics section. Tory MSP says John Swinney should give Donald Trump his own tartan. Article written by James Walker. A Tory MSP has said that John Swinney should give Donald Trump his own tartan. In a column for The Scotsman, Murdo Fraser said it would be an inexpensive but symbolic move that could ultimately help boost the Scottish economy. It comes after Donald Trump was sworn in for his second term as US President on Monday. The MSP for Mid Scotland and Fife said, "In our national interests, I would expect Scottish political representatives to be reaching out to the new president with the hand of friendship and looking at how Scottish business might benefit from closer transatlantic links." He added, "There have been few US presidents with such strong Scottish connections, such as Trump, and the opportunity to exploit them should not be sacrificed on the altar of misplaced moral superiority." Trump's mother, Mary Ann MacLeod, was born in the small village of Tong in the Isle of Lewis before making the move stateside. The US president also owns several golf courses in Scotland. Perhaps the Scottish government could start with a small gesture towards the new president, Fraser suggested. The official Scottish Register of Tartans does not disclose the existence of a Donald Trump tartan, although one does exist for his daughter Ivanka. The Tory MSP then said it would be a simple matter for the Scottish Government to propose a new Donald Trump tartan. He went on to say that it could be presented to Trump on his next visit to Scotland by the First Minister. It would be an inexpensive but symbolic move which might well reap significant rewards for the Scottish economy, Fraser said. Trump's son Eric previously suggested that his father would visit Scotland later this year for the opening of a new golf course in Aberdeenshire. And that article was written by James Walker.
From The National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the comment section. Did Elon Musk give a Nazi salute on purpose? If the jackboot fits. Column by Wee Ginger Doug. Over in America, it's day one of the Third Reich. Amongst the lowlights of yesterday's inauguration of Donald Trump as American president was the sight of an overly energetic Elon Musk excitedly making what was very evidently a Nazi salute to a crowd of Trump supporters at an inauguration event. The gesture, which Musk made a number of times, was identified as a Nazi salute by both the Israeli press and far-right white supremacist groups. Musk fanboys have tried to claim that it was no such thing, merely a clumsy attempt to hail, or should that be heil, his supporters in the crowd. These denials might have more credibility if Musk was noted for his commitment to fighting racism and bigotry, but this is a man who habitually platforms extreme right racist conspiracy theories and supports far-right parties across Europe. Was it a Nazi salute? If the jackboot fits. Trump himself issued a slew of presidential executive orders lifted straight from the far-right Project 2025 playbook, which he had denied having anything to do with prior to his election victory. One order was to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. something Trump doesn't actually have the power to do, as it is not an internal body of water entirely within the US. The rest of the world doesn't need to go along with Trump's grandiose fantasy. Instead, we should call it the gulf between Trump's promises and what he delivers. Trump voters are going to be even more let down than those who voted for Keir Starmer in the expectation of change. Other orders include withdrawing the US from both the Paris Climate Accords and the World Health Organization, mass deportations of undocumented migrants, and the reclassification of thousands of federal employees as political appointees, meaning civil servants can be fired and replaced by Trump loyalists. There were the expected attacks on the trans community and orders to rip up measures aimed at tackling structural racism. Trump effectively declared war in Panama by insisting that the US will seize the Panama Canal. Trump also pardoned the January 6 rioters, including those convicted of violent offences. Apparently, it's okay to attack the police as long as you're a far-right conspiracy theorist. It's going to be a rough 4 years. Labour's broken promises keep stacking up. Another day, another broken Labour promise. Economists at the Fraser of Allender Institute have warned that the UK government's budget will mean inflation and interest rates are higher for longer, despite the promise of Labour while in opposition that their number one priority would be to promote economic growth. Labour promised to do this without taking the one action that experts universally agree would boost the UK economy: rejoining the European single market and customs union. Pandering to the right-wing press is more important to Keir Starmer than people's livelihoods and well-being. After studying the likely impact of Rachel Reeves' budget statement in October, experts at the Fraser of Allender Institute have concluded that, while the UK government was keen to present a budget supporting growth and avoiding tax increases, the measures Reeves announced will have the effect of reducing growth in the medium term. The study also found that workers will bear the burden of the hike in employers' national insurance contributions announced in the budget in the form of lower pay rises and less employment. The only real question: is anyone surprised anymore by Starmer's failure to deliver? And, like any question posed as a newspaper article headline, the answer to that is no. And it appears that yet another Labour promise is due to be broken shortly. There are persistent reports that the UK government is set to penalise disabled people in receipt of disability benefits. Charities have warned that cuts to disability benefits would be devastating for vulnerable people and increase poverty, after the government doubled down on its plans to slash the bill for benefits payments. Under the previous Tory government, the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, had pledged to reform the work capability assessment and restrict access to the health elements of universal credit. These plans would have meant hundreds of thousands of new claimants would miss out on financial support worth around £400 a month by 2029. Labour has confirmed that it intends to deliver the full level of savings in public finance forecasts outlined by the Conservatives in their proposals to cut disability benefits. Labour is perpetuating the pernicious Conservative myth that economic difficulties are due to payments made in support of the poor and the vulnerable, and not because of the greed of the wealthiest. A consultation into the plans carried out by the DWP in autumn 2023 was, last week, ruled unlawful by a High Court judge who found that it had been misleading, rushed and unfair. As a result of the court ruling, the Labour government is set to launch a fresh consultation, but there are still fears they will continue with the cost-cutting measures. Following the High Court ruling, a DWP spokesperson confirmed the judge had found the previous government failed to adequately explain their proposals. As part of wider reforms that help people into work and ensure fiscal sustainability, the government will reconsult on the work capability assessment descriptor changes, addressing the shortcomings in the previous consultation in light of the judgment. The government intends to deliver the full level of savings in the public finance forecast. If it looks like austerity, talks like austerity, and cuts like austerity, it's a safe bet that it is actually austerity, no matter what promises Anas Sarwar made that they were way above his pay grade. And that was a comment piece by Wee Ginger Doug. From The National, Tuesday the 21st of January 2025, from the comment section. Why aesthetic should have been curtailed long ago, by columnist and community editor Shona Craven. a person having a non-surgical cosmetic intervention has no more protection and redress than someone buying a ballpoint pen or a toothbrush. This was a stark finding of a UK-wide review of the regulation of cosmetic interventions for the Department of Health that was published in April 2013. The authors warned that dermal fillers are a crisis waiting to happen and made recommendations for urgent action in England by the end of the same year. Despite this, it took the Scottish Government until 2014 to establish a cosmetic interventions expert group to look into regulation of this industry, and another 18 months for it to produce a report. Incredibly, a decade on from the group's formation, there is still no regulation in place to prevent an untrained, unsupervised person from injecting Botox or dermal fillers into the face of anyone else in any location of their choosing. The government's latest consultation on the topic highlights that some people are carrying out non-surgical cosmetic procedures with no adequate training or oversight, using unlicensed, unsuitable or low-quality products in hotels, vehicles and private homes. Unsurprisingly, a previous consultation found that the vast majority of respondents considered this unsatisfactory. The sector has not been completely unregulated for all this time. In 2016, independent clinics staffed by qualified professionals were brought under Healthcare Improvement Scotland (HIS) regulation. The first public consultation, which proposed introducing a broader licensing scheme, did not take place until under 2020. 98% of respondents said further regulation was needed, and most believe non-surgical cosmetic procedures should be carried out by trained, qualified and regulated healthcare professionals. However, the wording of some questions seemed to presuppose agreement with a much lower bar. In response to, "Do you agree that the carrying out of non-surgical cosmetic procedures that pierce/penetrate the skin by individuals who are not qualified healthcare professionals should be licensed under Part 1 of the Civic Government Scotland Act 1982? 61% of people said yes, but the majority of those who disagreed felt a licensing system did not go far enough, or that such people should not be performing the procedures to begin with. Based on the responses to the consultation and what stakeholders have told us, the priority from a clinical safety perspective is to consider regulating the administration of dermal fillers, said the Scottish Government. It pointed out the risk of long-term damage when such procedures go wrong, and that specific prescription-only medication may need to be urgently administered in such circumstances. Clearly, that is unlikely to be possible if someone is in a hotel room having a dubious substance injected into their face by someone who has never so much as opened a medical textbook. The latest consultation, which closes on February 14th, seeks views in a new system that would involve categorising procedures into 3 groups and regulating them accordingly. The procedures are as follows. Group 1, the least invasive and lowest risk set of procedures, could be carried out by licensed individuals in licensed premises, either a clinic regulated by HIS or other premises licensed by the local authority. Group 2 procedures, which are more invasive and involve higher risk, could only be provided in HIS regulated clinics with supervision by an appropriate healthcare professional, including a prescriber where prescription-only medicines are in use. Group 3 procedures, the most risky, could be carried out only by healthcare professionals. Under the proposals, the injection of toxins or drugs and semi-permanent dermal fillers would fall into Group 2, meaning the person doing such work wouldn't need to be a healthcare professional, but would need to be supervised by one. This, perhaps unsurprisingly, has met with disapproval from healthcare professionals who carry out such procedures in specialist clinics and charge accordingly. As reported in the Herald, a group of medics working on the so-called aesthetics field has written to Public Health Minister Jenny Minto, calling for these procedures to fall into Group 3. Dr. Darren McCowan describes the inclusion of Botox and fillers in Group 2 as perplexing based on the risk involved. The harsh reality is that non-medically qualified practitioners should have never have been performing these procedures in the first place, he says, and it's hard to disagree. The availability of cheap, dubious procedures has undoubtedly boosted demand for them and helped normalise the idea that needles and toxins should be part of a woman's skin care regime. Headlines making tweakments sound trivial have not helped. We are now in the position where regulation is likely to shut down some of those who have been meeting that demand. Those small business owners and their customers are, of course, voters too, and there's an election looming. The consultation speaks of the need for proportionate regulation, emphasising that any negative impact on businesses must be balanced against the need to eliminate any risk or harm to clients. 10 years ago, when the expert group was first convened, this sector was much smaller, although the lack of regulations means we still don't really know how much injecting is going on, where or by whom. The best way to balance the interest of clients and providers would have been to prevent it from booming the risky way it has, with inadequate regulation and the creation of unrealistic expectations about how procedures are provided, how much they should cost, and what could potentially go wrong. And that was a comment piece by Shona Craven.
The National Politics on Wednesday the 22nd of January. Former SNP MP says Westminster bar spiking scandal not the first incident. An article written by Gregor Young. A former SNP MP has said that she knows of another alleged incident at a notorious Westminster bar after it was closed due to an alleged drink spiking incident. The former MP for Livingston, Hannah Bardell, told the Herald that she believes it's time to restrict the sale of alcohol on the parliamentary estate to combat the old-school drinking culture. She added that she wouldn't be surprised if there'd been other spiking attempts at the parliamentary pub, the Strangers Bar. Ms Bardell's comments follow the closure of the Westminster pub on Monday after Scotland Yard received reports of an incident on January the 7th. A female parliamentary researcher reportedly alerted staff and security at Strangers Bar to her drink having been tampered with. I know of at least one other woman when I was an MP who told me about a terrifying experience where a person spiked her drink, Ms Bardell said. The fact that we're still hearing that incidents like this are happening to women is horrific. The House of Commons authorities have said that they want to change things and clean up Parliament, but we're not seeing that. No arrests have been made in connection with the alleged incident. The UK Parliament reportedly said that it will not be launching its own investigation into the incident, but did add that it will assist police where it can. Michelle Thompson, the SNP MSP for Falkirk East and a former MP for Edinburgh West, told the Herald that the alleged incident was absolutely shocking and that it highlights a cultural problem in Westminster. I should not be surprised that issues which are so prevalent in wider societies also occurred in Westminster, but I am shocked, Ms Thompson said. This comes on top of a number of serious sexual assault complaints in the last Parliament. It seems clear that Westminster has a cultural issue. Ms Thompson added that during her time as an MP from 2015 to 2017, she was never uncomfortable in Strangers Bar, but stated that another Commons bar, the Sports and Social Club Bar, is one place that she would never go. She said it felt like a student union on a Friday night. Lots of young men shouting, drinking, leering, making jokes that only they found funny. Not a safe place. A House of Commons spokesperson told the Herald that the safety of everyone on the estate remains a key priority of both houses. The bar has since been rebranded the Woolsack and refurbished following a series of fights and other scandals at the establishment. Ms Thompson has previously spoken about her own personal experiences, including a serious incident of sexual assault against her. She has previously described the impact of being raped at 14 during a House of Commons debate. I learned early on in my life to be wary of men, she said, but I think my wariness is felt by the vast majority of women. To be able to feel safe in a public social environment should be the norm, but too often it is the exception. And this makes to a culture of power dynamics, and it becomes more pervasive. Most women I knew simply chose to exclude themselves from that sort of environment. Following the alleged incident at the Strangers Bar, Ms Bardell is now calling for the Parliament to restrict the sale of alcohol to after hours. When speaking about the availability of drink at Westminster, Ms Bardell told the Herald, "This is a hangover of a bygone era, and it makes young women in particular feel more vulnerable." In a place where the laws of the land have been made, there's still this old-school drinking culture, and it's very concerning. She added, Parliament needs to drag itself out of the Dark Ages. It's not a modern workplace, and it makes voters lose faith if they know that politicians can drink at all hours of the day. An article written by Gregor Young.
This is an article from the news pages of The National, published on the 22nd of January. It's written by Laura Hannett. Glasgow's drug room sees more than 100 visitors in its first week. A drug consumption facility in Glasgow has welcomed over 100 people during its first week of operation. Named The Thistle, the facility opened on January the 13th and has since seen 131 individuals attend in 1 week only. Councillor Alan Casey, the city convener for addiction services, praised the staff for their successful week and their efforts to help as many people as possible. It's been an intense first week for the team, as all eyes are on Glasgow. I am delighted to hear that people are making use of all the facilities available at the Thistle, said Mr. Casey. As well as being able to use the safer injecting facilities, service users were provided with wound care, clean injecting equipment, and naloxone as required. They also utilised the wider services available inside, including the shower, laundry and lounge area. Some service users have already engaged with housing and drug treatment support. There were no medical emergencies resulting from drug use within the facility. The Thistle is composed of nurses, psychology, harm reduction workers, social workers, medical and admin staff. Staff are formed to offer safer injection techniques, to reduce the risk of overdose and intervene with assistance if a person needs help. We know this is not a silver bullet, but having a facility that is safe, hygienic and medically supervised will go a long way towards reducing drug-related overdoses, injection-related wounds and infections, and the negative impact that injecting outdoors has on local communities, said Mr. Casey. It's a promising start, and I know that the team, and everyone involved, is eager to engage and welcome more people in the weeks and months to come, he added. The Thistle is open from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, and is located at 55 Hunter Street, in Glasgow. That was an article written by Laura Hannett.
The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of January. Fur flies as a legend. Mo the cat is banned from the village co-op. An article written by James Walker. A petition has been launched after a much-loved cat was banned from a Scottish village's co-op supermarket. Mo the cat is a legend, according to the local musician who launched the petition on change.org, which has more than 1,000 signatures. She said that the feline was a warm and frequent presence in the supermarket in Newton Grange in Midlothian, napping, watching shoppers and wandering the aisles. But after a complaint was made to head office, Mo was banned from her regular haunt. One Facebook user reacting to the news said, "As far as I'm concerned, she made the co-op. The co-op didn't exist until she decided it did." Another said, "Mo is our honorary village mascot. I'm pretty sure environmental health won't do much unless they find her asleep on the bananas." The petition organiser added, "Let's face it, Mo has become a co-op institution. In fact, some people have even claimed that they'd rather share an aisle with Mo than some of the more distracting human customers. You know the type, the ones who treat the self-checkout like it's a high-stakes gambling game, taking 5 minutes to figure out how to scan a bag of carrots, while the rest of us are just trying to get home before dinner burns. But Mo is a peaceful presence." She added, "Mo isn't just any cat, she's a local legend. Whether she's napping on a shop seat like a tiny fluffy queen, or watching the shoppers hustle by with a serene look of, 'I'm far too cool for this,' Mo has been the heart and soul of the Newton Grange Co-op for years." An article written by James Walker.
This is a column from the opinion pages of The National, published on the 22nd of January. It's written by Caitlin Logan. How can we overcome helplessness as billionaires take over the planet? This week has not been a good week for optimism. Watching the second inauguration of Donald Trump, where he was flanked by some of the world's richest billionaires, it was hard not to be overcome by a sinking feeling. the first executive orders of Trump's second term mean that the United States will leave the World Health Organization, numerous LGBT+, and race equality orders from Joe Biden's presidency will be scrapped, and around 1,500 people convicted in connection with the riot at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, will be pardoned. A national energy emergency has been declared in the US which, contrary to common sense and scientific evidence, is all about unleashing gas and oil production and halting progress on renewable energy. Given the global power and economic impact the US wields, all of this is pretty scary. Knowing that Nigel Farage's Reform UK, who is closely aligned with Trump and his ideology, is now polling at 23% in the UK, makes it an even bleaker prospect. However, while the urge to wallow in despair or surrender to helplessness is tempting, we must resist the impulse. There is much about world events that is beyond our immediate control. When the planet and its politics seem to be hurtling in the wrong direction, this can feel especially disempowering. But when we decide to give up, when we allow ourselves to believe that there is no point in trying to fight it or create something better, then that is when the corrupt and hateful forces of the world truly win. So, in this moment of anguish, instead of leaning into it, I want to encourage all of us, including myself, to acknowledge the power that we have to make changes in our own communities and in our own lives. By working together and focusing on the kind of society we want to live in, there are ways that we can have a big impact on a small scale. One of the most important ways that we can make a direct and immediate difference is by supporting the community groups and organizations which are working tirelessly to offer both short and long-term solutions to many of the problems facing our world today. In every nook and cranny of the country, you can find groups of people who are committed to providing others with much-needed practical, financial and emotional support and to testing and advocating for better ways of doing things at the local, national and even international level. By donating your own time or money to any one of these groups, whatever you are able to give, you can contribute to the creation of better community spaces and support networks. Grassroots community action and mutual aid are among the most radical yet achievable ways that we can build solidarity and affect change in people's lives. At a time when trust in political institutions is plummeting and a sense of defeat or self-preservation risks turning many of us away from the world, optimism for the potential of community organizing and support is vital. You can be a part of that. A key feature of this kind of organizing is also honing in on the broader, systemic changes that need to be made by local and national governments and campaigning for them relentlessly. In a sea of so many problems that need fixing, it's all too common to feel what's described as choice paralysis. There's so much to do that doing nothing feels like the only option. But well-organized policy campaigns do work, so don't be dissuaded from investing your energy in the issues that matter to you. Whether that means volunteering, or working directly with a campaign group, or signing petitions, sending emails to elected representatives, and sharing materials with your own networks, campaigning is a crucial way of bringing pressure to bear on institutions. And if the campaign that you believe is urgently needed doesn't exist yet, you might even start your own. Some of the most successful policy campaigns of recent years in Scotland have been spearheaded by grassroots groups without pre-existing name recognition or large public relations budgets, so don't let anyone tell you it isn't possible. Of course, there is also the option of getting involved in party politics and seeking to influence change from within. You don't need to fancy yourself as the next First Minister to join a local party branch and encourage others to do the same. It's pretty clear that we need more people with first-hand experience of the problems facing a diverse range of communities to have their voices heard in politics. Voices can only be heard if they're in the room, so why not get yourself into one of those rooms? For many people, and for many reasons, politics, activism, and even volunteering might seem like daunting prospects. Fortunately, there are lots of different ways of contributing to positive change in the world, and all of them are worthwhile. As individuals, we can make choices every day that support social and environmental justice. We can reduce our food waste, avoid fast fashion, reduce our use of energy and fuel, buy more local produce, and generally engage in more ethical forms of consumption. Doing all of this at once might sound overwhelming, but if each of us can start with one area where we know we can change our habits and build from there, we can make a big difference. At the moment, climate fatalism or climate futility might just be the biggest risk to the future of the planet. As essential as it is to secure decisive action from governments on this, creating a more sustainable future is something in which each and every one of us can and must play a role. Another area where we all have the ability to contribute is through the exchange of ideas and information. Whether we are active on social media or participating in social activity with family, friends, or colleagues, we are all in contact with people with whom we can have important conversations about the solutions we need in our local, national, and international communities. This is an integral part of the process of changing minds and galvanizing action, and it shouldn't be discounted. Underpinning all of this is the fundamental need for people to support each other. Whether you're standing alongside someone at a rally, providing support in a time of crisis, or sharing useful sources of information or support to help get people through the week, or to get them onto the committee of a community organization, all of this matters. The impact you can make on one person, 20 people, or 10,000 people is enormous. I believe this is important to remember in times of near hopelessness more than ever, because without hope, we are truly lost. The only people served by nihilism are the ones who would seek to keep us downtrodden and divided, while they enjoy the dividends. There is a frightened rabbit lyric that has always resonated with me: while I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to Earth. This is something that every one of us can aspire to, and there is nothing tiny about that. That was a column written by Caitlin Logan.
This is an article from the news pages of The National, published on the 22nd of January. It's written by Xander Elliots. Police issue update after man and girl found dead in West Calder. Police Scotland have issued an update after a 36-year-old man and a 6-year-old girl were found dead inside a house in West Lothian. The pair were discovered inside a property on Harburn Drive, West Calder, on Monday, and police have now said they have nothing to suggest that there was anyone else involved. The Daily Record reported that they were Mark Gordon, who is 36, and Hope, who is 6 years old. On Wednesday, officers said that their deaths were being treated as unexplained, and that inquiries were ongoing. A team of officers from Police Scotland's major investigation team, plus the local division, are involved in the investigation. Police said post-mortem examinations had not yet taken place, but would in due course. The force said it will be maintaining a significant presence in the area while the investigation is ongoing, including uniformed and plain-clothed officers. Detective Chief Inspector Bob Williamson, of the Major Investigation Team, said, "Our thoughts remain with the man and girl's relatives at this extremely difficult time, and they continue to be supported by specialist officers. They are understandably devastated, and it is vital we get answers for them. At this time, we have no information to suggest anyone else is involved, and our inquiries are continuing. I would ask that anyone with any information, no matter how small or insignificant you think it is, gets in touch with officers." Chief Inspector Elaine MacArthur-Kerr, the local area commander, said, "We understand the significant impact that this will have on the local community, and I would like to thank everyone for their help so far. This incident is very upsetting and worrying for the people living in this community, and we would ask anyone with any concerns to speak to us. A police presence will remain in the area while we carry out investigations, and anyone with any concerns or information can approach these officers." The family have requested privacy, police said. That was an article written by Xander Elliots.
This is from The National on Thursday, 23rd January 2025. From the Culture section. Jack Lowden and Martin Freeman to star in West End play about addiction. By Adam Robertson. Scottish actor Jack Lowden and Sherlock's Martin Freeman are to star in a play about addiction that has been transferred to the West End. Slow Horses actor Lowden, 34, will reprise his role as Luca in the production about alcoholism, masculinity and faith, which was staged in Dundee, Glasgow and at Edinburgh International Festival in 2024. The Fifth Step, which has been written by David Ireland and directed by Finn Den Hertog, will also see BAFTA award-winning actor Freeman, 53, in the role of James. In the play, James, who has been in the 12-step programme of Alcoholics Anonymous for many years, agrees to become the sponsor of newcomer Luca. Approaching step 5, their conversations must turn to confessionals, with Luca's progress hinging on him opening up about secrets which could lead back to alcohol. Olivier award-winning actor Loudon said, "To just be in the room again with David and Finn, two dangerously talented individuals, is a gift in itself. But to now add Martin to the mix, an actor of black belt level skill and a hero of mine, just tops it. I can't wait for more people to experience the 5th step." Sherlock actor Freeman added, "I'm really looking forward to performing this brilliantly funny, unsettling, unexpected play. David Ireland is something quite special, and Jack Loudon is an actor I have tremendous respect for, and I'm looking forward to working with him." Ireland said, "I'm really happy that the 5th step is coming to the West End." Jack Loudon and Martin Freeman are, for my money, two of the best actors in the country, so I feel very blessed to have them both in this play. I hope audiences in London will find the play as thrilling and funny and thought-provoking as audiences in Scotland have. Loudon has appeared in films including Dunkirk, 2017, Calibre, 2018, and Mary Queen of Scots, 2018. Freeman is known for playing Bilbo Baggins in the Hobbit film series and won the Best Supporting Actor TV BAFTA in 2011 for his role playing Dr. John Watson in the BBC series Sherlock. The production will open at Soho Place in London for a limited 11-week season, previewing from May 10th and running until July 26th. Of the tickets available, 15% will be priced at £25. Details about access performance are yet to be confirmed. That article is by Adam Robertson. This is from The National on Thursday, 23rd January 2025, from the Culture section. Stone of Destiny's ancient Roman numeral mystery unravelled, by Laura Pollock. The researcher who is trying to trace the hidden fragments of the Stone of Destiny believes she has decoded another mystery of the ancient artefact, Roman numerals which were etched onto it. A detailed 3D scan was made of the Stone of Scone ahead of the King's coronation in 2023. This revealed the Roman numerals XXXV were inscribed on a part of the 152 kilogram sandstone block, which would have been difficult to access. Historic Environment Scotland, which carried out the scan and produced a virtual 3D model of the stone, said it had been unable to ascertain the purpose or meaning of the inscription. However, Professor Sally Foster of Stirling University believes they may be a relatively modern addition to the centuries-old object and linked to her other area of research. Her theory points to the marking being made by Bertie Gray, the stonemason and nationalist politician who oversaw the secret repair of the stone in 1951. During the famous raid on Westminster Abbey in 1950, when 4 students spirited the stone back to Scotland, it split in 2, and Gray later oversaw the work to repair it. Last week, Foster appealed to help trace the stories of more than 30 fragments of the original stone which were created during Gray's work. Foster has already received word of several fragments which remain in private ownership, including one which ended up in Orkney. Her research has led her to believe Gray's work led to as many as 34 carefully numbered and recorded pieces. While the theory may be impossible to prove, the Roman numeral of 35 could refer to Gray seeing the Stone of Destiny itself as the 35th fragment. Foster told the PA news agency she had come to the realisation this week, saying, "The penny dropped. 34 fragments plus 1 stone equals 35. Of course, I can't prove this, but what else might it be?" Gray never publicly revealed exactly how many pieces he distributed, and he died in 1975. Foster said, "He's writing on it, this is the 35th. It fits in with his sense of humour and with him putting his own mark on the stone." She argues there would have been few circumstances, other than the masonry work, in which anyone would have been able to access the lower part of the stone where the XXV inscription can be seen. An article in the Calgary Herald from April 1951 refers to Gray himself putting the finishing touches on the repair to the stone and being proud of his work. The article's author, Dick Sanborn, is one of those who received a fragment from Gray. He kept the piece, number 25, behind his desk in the Canadian newspaper's office. Other fragments were given to people in and around the nationalist movement. The commissioners for the safeguarding of the regalia, the body of senior officials charged with overseeing the Scottish Crown jewels, are currently considering what should happen with a fragment gifted to Alex Salmond, which was kept in the SNP's headquarters. Foster is keen to hear from people who may own or know of one of the fragments of the stone which were distributed by Gray. She can be contacted on her project's website, thestone.stir.ac.uk, or through Stirling University. A spokesperson for Historic Environment Scotland said, "We don't know for certain when these markings were made on the stone or what they signify. While they have the appearance of Roman numerals, this does not necessarily mean they date to Roman times. The appearance of the markings and the fact they have not been recorded previously suggest they may have been carved more recently. We hope this will be an area for further research." That article was by Laura Pollock.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and tell your friends about our service.